This video is about multiplying matrices. So when we're trying to multiply one matrix by another, there are rules around how and why we can do that. So a multiplication of a matrix can only be calculated if the columns in the first matrix are equal to the rows in the second matrix. So I've given you an example there, and the big thing to remember when you're multiplying matrices is writing down the order of the matrix first. So remember, the order is this part here where I've written it's a 1 by 3 matrix. So it means it's 1 row by 3 columns. And then our second matrix is a 3 by 2, which is 3 rows and 2 columns. Remember, rows are horizontally and columns are vertically. So what the good thing is about writing down the order of the matrix is that it tells you two things. It tells you, firstly, if the multiplication of the matrix can be done, and that is by seeing if these two inside numbers are the same. So they are. So I say, yes, they can be multiplied. And then the other two numbers actually tell you the order of the answer. So it means it's going to be a 1 by 2 matrix as the answer, which you can see here. And that means it's going to give us an answer of 1 row and 2 columns. So this little diagram that I found here is actually showing you how we achieve each element of the answer. So you can see here, it's got the first, like the top section says, we've got a 2 by 4 matrix and we're multiplying it by a 4 by 3 matrix, which means we can do it and that our answer is going to be a 2 by 3 matrix. So you can see, to achieve the first element in the answer, which is C11, we have to do row 1 of A multiplied by column 1 of B. And you can see there, to do that, what we do is we multiply the corresponding elements and then we add them together. And that final addition, that final sum gives us that example, that element in the answer. So you can see we would do the first element in matrix A times the first element in matrix B. Then we add on element A1, 2 and multiply it by element B, 2, 1, and so on. And then it tells you how we could achieve element C, 2, 2. So that is the element in the answer in row 2, column 2. And by understanding this diagram, I mean, this one's quite complicated because they're quite large matrices, but by understanding each of these things, it means that you won't get lost if you were to stop a question halfway through or you need to backtrack to check something. You know how each element is actually achieved. Okay, so we'll do an example now. And I've got example 1 here. Matrix A is there. It's a 2 by 3 matrix. So I'm just going to write that straight away, that it's a 2 by 3, 2 rows by 3 columns. And that matrix B is a 3 by 2 matrix. The reason I'm doing that is because it asks me to find A times B. So I need to do my checks. I look at the inside numbers, 3 and 3, they are the same. That means we can multiply. And I know that my order of my answer is going to be a square matrix that is 2 by 2. So what you can do when you're first practicing is you can write your little 2 by 2 matrix here, and you can write down like they did in the last one, C11, C12, C21, and C22. And then we can work out how we achieve those. So to do that, we're going to start our answer here. So I'm going to first to get C11, I'm going to write this down just for the first one. To get C in row 1, column 1, we are going to multiply row 1 of matrix A by column 1 of matrix B. So the very first step is to do the first elements multiplied. So I'm going to do 4 times 1 because we've got our 4 by 1 here. And then I'm going to do plus 8 times 2 plus 1 times 3. And you can see there I've just done each of the corresponding elements and multiplied them together, and then we have to do a sum of that afterwards. So we've got 4 plus 16 is 20, plus 3 is 23. So in our answer, we're going to have 23 in that row 1, column 1 position. And then to get C1, 2, we are going to do row 1 of matrix A times column 2 of matrix B. So I'll just write this one down again so you can see. So we would do 4 times 4 plus 8 times 2 plus 1 times negative 4. And then again, we just work that out. So we've got 16 plus 16 is 32, plus negative 4 is 28. So we would end up with 28 in our spot for row 1, column 2. And then again, we just do the next part. So for the position in the answer of row 2, column 1, we would use row 2 from the first matrix and multiply it by column 1 of the second matrix. Okay, so to do C21, I'm going to write that down. C21, we're going to do row 2 by column 1. So we're going to have 3 times 1 plus 2 times 2 plus 4 times 3. So we've got 3 plus 4 is 7 plus 12 is 19. So that gives us our third element in our final answer. And then to do the last one, we would do row 2 by column 2, which is 3 times 4, which is 12, plus 2 times 2, which is 4, so that's 16, plus 4 times negative 4, which is negative 16. So we've got 16 add negative 16, and that gives us 0. So our final answer for the multiplication of matrix A times matrix B gives us a square 2 by 2 matrix, which is 23, 28, 19, and 0. And we just need to make sure you do the corresponding rows and columns in each spot to get each position of the answer. So we'll do a second example. The next example is looking at matrix D and matrix E. So again, when you get a question, the first thing is to write the order of the matrix. So rows by columns. So matrix D is a 1 by 3 and matrix E is a 2 by 1. So we've been asked to find D times E. So the first thing, again, we look at, we've written that in the order that it is. So we've got a 1 by 3 matrix and a 2 by 1 matrix. Now remember, these middle numbers here tell us whether or not we can do that, and they have to be the same. So because they're not the same, it means that we actually can't multiply D times E. So we would say here, not possible. So we'd write not possible, and then you would just add a little thing to say that columns in D does not equal rows in E. So when you get a question like this, you need to make sure that you actually state that it can't be done and why, because otherwise you could just, if you leave it blank, it's assumed that you haven't answered the question or something like that. So the next part of this question is we've been asked to find E times D, and we need to see whether or not we can do this. So because it's E times D now, I'm just going to rewrite the order again here. So 1 times 3 and a 2 by 1. So because it's E first, this time we have to write the order of E first. So we've got a 2 by 1 multiplied by a 1 by 3. Now, just because D times E couldn't be done, it does not mean that E times D can't be done. We need to check it just like we're doing now. So we've written our order of our matrix in the correct order that we're supposed to multiply. And now you'll notice that the inside numbers are the same. So that means, yes, we can actually multiply these two matrices, but it has to be multiplied in the order of E times D, not D times E. And the outside numbers, remember, they tell us the order of the answer. So we're going to have a 2 by 3 matrix. So that means 2 rows and 3 columns. So we'll have C1, 1. Actually, let's go with G this time. So we'll have G1, 1, G1, 2, G1, 3, and then we'll have G2, 1, G2, 2, and G2, 3. Okay, so I'm just going to write these matrices actually in the order again. So we've got -1, 0 for matrix E times 4, 9, 2 for matrix D. So our answer, we'll have a 2 by 3 matrix, and we get element G1, 1 by doing row 1 by column 1. So row 1 is -1, and column 1 in matrix D is 4. So we're just doing -1 times 4. So -1 times 4 is -4. Then the next spot along that top line is row 1 by column 2. So -1 times 9, which is -9. And then the third number along that row is row 1 by column 3, which is -1 times 2, which is -2. And then we just do the same, but with the second row of matrix E. So we do 0 times 4, which is 0, 0 times 9, which is 0, and 0 times 2, which is 0. And we have our answer. So just a reminder that you've got to make sure you look at which order the multiplication is being asked to be done in. So the first part of the question said DE, which means you're doing multiplication of matrix D times matrix E, which we couldn't do, and we worked that out. Then it actually asks you to reverse the order. So with multiplication of matrices, D times E does not always mean it's the same as E times D. And you just need to make sure you write the order of the matrix, check the inside numbers to see if they are the same. If they are, great, you can multiply the matrix, and the outside numbers tell you the order of the answer. If the numbers don't match, then you cannot multiply the matrix, and you need to write down why that matrix cannot be multiplied. Hopefully that's given you a little bit of an understanding about how to multiply matrices. The best thing with matrices and to get better at multiplying matrices is to practice them over and over again.